Hi, everyone. My name is Darlene Reyes, and I'm EnCorps May Learning Summit keynote speaker. The theme is Leading Through Change, Advancing Equity. So take a journey with me as I talk about how equality does not equal equity. I'm the oldest of four siblings. We were raised by my beautiful single mother, and we were raised in a low socioeconomic household. So inevitably, as a child of an immigrant, I became the family translator as the oldest. And I also became a co-parent with my mother. I used school as a safe haven. It was a place where I didn't have all of those responsibilities. It's a place where I could learn and explore. But I quickly found out that it was also not a place that I always felt welcomed in. I would receive comments like, "You speak English so well, you don't have an accent." Well, I don't have one because I was told to value to not have one because it was easier for other folks to understand me, despite if I was using the correct words or not. I also heard a lot of comments like, "Your mom is never here." Well, my mom has four kids and she has competing priorities as a single mother. Her responsibilities were to ensure that there was food on our table and we had clothes on our backs and we had a roof above our heads. So it looks a little bit different. And unfortunately, she was not able to show up to all the things that I would have wanted her to. And even today, I face comments or I think about things as in like when I translate for my mother and we're in spaces, folks will look at me as if I'm the one receiving the service, yet it's my mother who is the patient or the client in the space. So it's very interesting how these types of comments, those comments that you're like, that made me feel some type of way. And I don't know why it did, but it just didn't land right. Those or that experience, that visceral reaction, that is what I call microaggressions. And it's not that the microaggression stopped while I was excelling in school. It's that I had folks who believed in me, who cared for me, who advocated for me and saw my potential and pushed me to excel. So I became a first generation high school grad, college grad, and now I have a graduate degree. My lived experience and through my work with the Posse Foundation and City Year, and especially with the Leading Equity Center as a student equity instructor, taught me that we don't have enough conversations about these types of things. We don't have enough conversations about microaggressions, about sense of belonging in spaces where students should feel belonging. And so I decided to pursue a master's in of education and educational psychology because it pairs my lived experience with academia. I can now tell you why the education system is the way it is today because of policies that began 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I can tell you why things are inequitable, and I can tell you what it means to create counter narratives, to tell stories that are not in the same lens of stereotypes, right? So my lived experience and the work that I do with students, recognizing the importance of having these conversations that aren't always happening in schools, is why I've been doing this work, because it is so important. Because why did I make it and not everyone else with the same experiences? The education system should be accessible and equitable for all, and it isn't. Because equality is equal, which means same, right? We all get the same. And equity means we get our needs met to have the same access. So, an example that comes to mind is this example from an educator who posted on Tumblr. They explain how they go through how they explain equity to their 8-year-olds. So at first they pretended that the students got hurt. And so the teacher was giving each student a Band-Aid and asked the first student, well, where does it hurt? Hypothetically. And he said, my finger. And so the teacher then goes to the second student and asked, well, where does it hurt for you? And regardless of the answer, the teacher would still put the Band-Aid on the finger, just like the first student said. And at the end, the teacher asked, did it help any of them other than the first child? And well, it didn't. right? Because yes, everyone received a Band-Aid and that makes it equal. But was it equitable? No, because equity means we get our needs met to have the same access. So, as the teacher was explaining that, they also brought up different things, such as when other students come to help, a specific student, or there's different assignments in class for different students, or people get pulled out of class to receive additional help. It's the story of the band-aids, right? Like, that's how they understand equity. So, how does equity affect schools? How does equity show up in our schools or lack thereof? So, for example, we say that honors classes or advanced classes are meant for everyone, yet they don't have everyone in their classes. It's not representative of the school demographics. Why is that? After school programs should be for everyone, but are all groups represented in those spaces? Our schools must meet our students' needs, but how do we know what they need? Well, we listen to our students and we advocate for their needs, even if they aren't our own. We amplify their voices. And everyone has a role to play, from volunteer to tutor to a fellow to a teacher in the classroom. The work we do is important, and we show up for our students. We normalize their experiences. Like, maybe they just need a shorthand for remembering a formula. Like, as a tutor, you can remember that, right? Or as a teacher, you can notice the frustration of your student and they're already super boggled down and disappointed right before a test. Well, maybe just give them a pep talk. Um, we have to be able to show them that they can do it. We have to truly believe that they can do it. And sometimes the support that they need might look different than the traditional way. And that is what equity is. The equity is meeting our students where they are so they can be successful, they can succeed. So, when we look at spaces such as STEM, where there's so much underrepresentation of certain races and ethnicities, despite how diverse our racial and ethnic makeup is as a country, it's even more important to show our students that they belong in those spaces, even if they aren't always made to feel welcomed. According to the Pew Research Center, Black folks make up 9% of all STEM jobs. Hispanic folks make up 8% of STEM jobs. Asian folks 13%, and white folks make up 67%. There's a lot of disparities within those different groups. And on top of that, women are still underrepresented in physical sciences, computer, and engineering STEM fields. And all of this information is from the STEM Jobs See Uneven Progress in Increasing Gender, Racial, and Ethnic Diversity by Richard Fry, Brian Kennedy, and Carrie Funk. So, who is doing the work to change this? EnCorps is. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the shared vision that you all have. You are anchored in our belief that traditionally underrepresented students belong in STEM. We prepare STEM role models to educate and inspire students who lack equitable access to a high quality science, technology, engineering, and math education. It really is at the core of your mission, right? Which is to see a future where students from under-resourced schools have the education and confidence to choose a STEM career so that they may thrive in an increasingly complex and diverse world. Complex and diverse world that is made up of so many different identities and voices, some that mainstream society has told us to value more over others. Underrepresented students have a story. Everyone has a story and everyone wants to be understood. So every step towards changing that narrative, towards creating spaces where folks feel included, where folks feel like they have a sense of belonging, is important work. And the work we do, regardless of the role that we play, whether that's a volunteer, a tutor, a fellow, an educator, is human work. And we must learn to acknowledge our humanity. We must listen to those that are systemically oppressed and underrepresented by forming relationships where we uplift their voices. And the work that we do is human work. And human work also comes with ego and bias. So we must acknowledge that in the work that we do. We can't just skip over it. But it also means that it's about how we turn those mistakes into lessons, into learning experiences and opportunities to continue to push and to give ourselves grace just as much as we give our students. We cannot do this work by ourselves. It's about the community. We have the same vision, we are working towards the same goals. And so we have to do this vital work together because when we work in silos, someone inevitably always ends up catching up. So, considering that we are all doing that work and we all play a role, lean on your community, your peers and support staff, because you're not by yourselves. You're not by yourself. You have each other. And JEDI, or Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion work, is about creating spaces where everyone truly belongs and where equity is no longer needed because we are co-creating spaces with all voices being heard. It's challenging but worthwhile work. So thank you for all of the work that you do towards accessibility and equity. And thank you for being a part of our community. Continue to share space and enjoy the rest of the Learning Summit. Thank you so much for your time and have a great time.